Close your eyes in prayer, and you're speaking the same ancient language as a shaman under stars, a monk in silence, a pilgrim washing sacred feet. What if every faith you know is just one dialect of an ancient spiritual language? There's something unsettling happening right now, something most people never notice. Across the planet, in temples, churches, mosques, sacred groves, and mountain shrines, millions are performing nearly identical gestures without ever having met, without sharing texts, without any coordination whatsoever. A Christian drops to her knees in a cathedral. A Sufi whirls in ecstatic trance. An Aboriginal elder paints sacred symbols on skin. And somehow, impossibly, they're all speaking the same language. This isn't about religious doctrine or theological debates. We're talking about something far older, far more primal than written scripture. We're talking about the body's own vocabulary for touching the infinite. Every bow, every purification, every chant carries encoded wisdom that predates civilization itself. And when you see these patterns side by side, something almost frightening emerges from the shadows. Think about this for a moment. Why does every major spiritual tradition on earth include some form of ritual washing before sacred encounters? Why do humans instinctively lower their bodies when approaching the divine? Why does rhythmic sound appear in literally every religious practice ever documented? These aren't random choices made by ancient priests trying to control populations. Something deeper is happening here. The human nervous system responds to certain physical actions in predictable ways. Prostration triggers humility responses in the brain. Rhythmic breathing alters consciousness states. Water contact creates psychological reset points. Our ancestors discovered these neurological gateways through direct experience, long before scientists could measure brainwaves or hormone levels. They built entire spiritual systems around what worked, what reliably opened doors to transcendent states. But here's what almost nobody talks about. These practices didn't spread through conquest or missionary work alone. They emerged independently in cultures that had zero contact with each other. Mayan priests purified themselves before ceremonies. Aboriginal Australians had elaborate washing rituals. Ancient Egyptians prostrated before their gods. Nordic shamans chanted themselves into altered states, all developing the same spiritual technology simultaneously. And here's where everything shifts. Because what we're about to explore isn't just fascinating anthropology, it's a revelation about what it means to be human, about the universal hunger for meaning that burns in every human heart, regardless of which gods they pray to or which scriptures they read. Your personal spiritual practice, whatever it is, connects you to this vast tapestry of human reaching toward something greater. Why ancient humans discovered that bodies must bow before entering sacred space. Your body knows things your mind hasn't figured out yet. When someone prostrates fully, forehead touching ground, something biochemical happens that scientists are only beginning to understand. The act of lowering your physical body triggers profound psychological shifts. Pride dissolves, ego boundaries soften, you become physically smaller, and in that smallness, something vast can finally enter. Watch a Muslim during Salah, 5 times daily, forehead pressed to earth, facing Mecca. The posture isn't arbitrary, it's engineered for transformation. Buddhist monks perform full-body prostrations thousands of times, a practice so physically demanding it becomes meditation through exhaustion. Hindu devotees bow deeply before deities and teachers. Christians kneel at altars worldwide. Indigenous peoples across every continent develop ceremonial postures of reverence that mirror each other with eerie precision. Here's what makes this truly strange. These traditions arose in complete isolation from each other. No trade routes connected ancient Maya to Tibetan monasteries. No missionaries brought Aboriginal practices to medieval Europe. Yet somehow, the human body discovered the same spiritual grammar independently, again and again, across thousands of years and miles. But that's not even the strangest part. There's another ritual that appears with even more consistency across religious boundaries: purification through water. Before any encounter with the sacred, the body must be cleansed. In Judaism, the mikveh represents total immersion, symbolic death and rebirth. In Hinduism, millions bathe in the Ganges, believing its waters wash away accumulated karma. Muslims perform wudu before each prayer, washing hands, face, and feet in precise sequence. And here's where it gets truly unsettling. Ancient civilizations that never communicated, Aztec, Egyptian, Polynesian, Norse, all developed water purification rituals before sacred ceremonies. They couldn't have copied each other. There were no books, no internet, no cultural exchange. So why this universal obsession with cleanliness before approaching the divine? The answer lies deeper than hygiene. Water creates psychological transition points. When you wash, you're creating a boundary between ordinary existence and sacred space. You're declaring intention. You're preparing your consciousness for something extraordinary. The physical act triggers mental preparation that our ancestors understood instinctively. Native American sweat lodge ceremonies, Japanese Shinto misogi purification, Catholic holy water blessings, Islamic ablution fountains, Hindu ritual bathing, all variations on an identical theme. The body as vessel must be prepared, cleaned, made worthy to receive spiritual energies that don't mix with ordinary daily contamination. This pattern reveals something profound about human psychology. We instinctively understand that transformation requires preparation, that sacred encounters demand respect expressed through physical action, that the divine won't be rushed or approached casually. Our bodies learned this long before our minds developed religious philosophies to explain it. How sound became humanity's oldest technology for accessing other dimensions. There's a secret that neuroscience only recently confirmed, but shamans have known for 50,000 years. Specific sound frequencies don't just affect your mood, they literally restructure your brain activity in real time. When humans discovered this, everything changed. Sound became the most powerful spiritual technology ever developed, and every religious tradition on earth built elaborate practices around it. Listen to Gregorian monks chanting in stone cathedrals. Those aren't random melodies. They're precise frequencies calculated to resonate within specific architectural spaces, creating overtones that trigger measurable altered states. Medieval monks understood acoustic engineering at levels we're only rediscovering now. The buildings themselves were instruments designed to amplify spiritual sound technology. Sufi dervishes spin while chanting Allah's 99 names in rhythmic repetition for hours. The dhikr isn't just devotional, it's neurotechnology. The combination of spinning, rhythmic vocalization, and focused attention reliably induces transcendent experiences. They developed this practice through centuries of experimentation, refining what worked, discarding what didn't. Here's where it gets truly bizarre. Indigenous cultures worldwide independently discovered that drumming at specific tempos, usually around 4-7 beats per second, synchronizes brainwaves and induces trance states. No communication between Australian Aboriginals, African tribes, and Native Americans. No shared instruction manual, yet all arrived at the same sonic frequencies for spiritual journey work. But that's not the strangest part. Recent neuroscience reveals that group chanting or singing synchronizes the brain activity of everyone participating. Their neural patterns literally begin pulsing together. Individual boundaries blur. Separate minds start functioning as one organism. And every religious tradition stumbled upon this phenomenon independently. Tibetan throat singing creates impossible harmonics. Hindu curtain chanting continues for hours, building collective energy. Christian gospel choirs know the power of unified voices. Jewish davening involves rhythmic prayer vocalization. Islamic call to prayer synchronizes entire communities 5 times daily. All variations on the same discovery. Sound in community dissolves separation and creates temporary unity consciousness. And here's where everything changes. Modern researchers measuring these practices find massive oxytocin release, the bonding hormone. Cortisol drops dramatically. Heart rates synchronize across groups. The effects are measurable, repeatable, undeniable. Ancient spiritual traditions didn't need laboratories to discover this. They felt it. They lived it. They built entire practices around what reliably worked. The most unsettling realization? If sound possesses this transformation power, if communal vocalization truly erases individual boundaries and creates unity experiences, then what else did ancient wisdom keepers understand about reality's nature that our materialist civilization has forgotten? What other gateways exist within human consciousness that we've stopped exploring? If this revelation sparks something in you, drop the word resonance in the comments. Tell me, have you ever experienced something unexplainable during group singing, sacred music, or shared silence? Hit that like button if you're following this journey, and subscribe so you don't miss the revelations still coming. Why humans transform survival's most basic act into sacred portal technology. Something deeply mysterious happens when religions take eating, the most mundane biological necessity, and transform it into doorway between worlds. We're not talking about simple gratitude prayers before meals. We're talking about full alchemical transformation where physical substances become carriers for spiritual realities that transcend language. In Christian tradition, the Eucharist represents the faith's deepest mystery. Bread and wine don't symbolize Christ's body and blood. For true believers, they become it. This isn't metaphor. It's claimed literal transformation. That ordinary wheat flour and fermented grapes can carry divine presence shows how far humans push the boundaries of sacred meaning through food. Hindu prasad operates on similar principles. Food offered first to deities returns blessed, carrying divine energy into physical form. Every rice, grain, every fruit piece presented at the altar comes back transformed, impregnated with spiritual power that enters devotees through eating. The digestive system becomes pathway for grace. Here's where it gets truly strange. Indigenous peoples across every continent developed harvest ceremonies where first fruits must be offered to land spirits before humans can eat. Nordic peoples held sacred feasts where mead and meat honored their gods. Jewish Shabbat transforms family tables into altars through specially prepared bread and wine. No communication between these cultures. No shared texts. Yet all arrived at identical conclusions. But that's not the most unsettling part. What's really happening here transcends nutrition or even symbolism. Communal, sacred meals create social bonds stronger than any doctrine or theology. When you share food ritually, you're not just dividing calories. You're building invisible connections, erasing hierarchies and reinforcing them simultaneously, marking time and seasons, transforming nutrients into narratives. Islamic iftar, the meal-breaking Ramadan's daily fast, isn't simply eating after hunger. It's collective celebration of spiritual discipline, shared gratitude moment, renewed community commitment. Buddhist monks receive elaborate food offerings from lay people, creating merit exchanges between renunciates and householders. African tribes prepare specific dishes for initiation rites, where every ingredient carries ancestral meaning. And here's where everything shifts. These practices didn't emerge from religious control strategies. They arose from direct human experience that sharing food creates stronger bonds than words ever could. When you eat together, you trust together. When you offer food to the divine, you acknowledge dependency and gratitude. When you receive blessed food, you internalize the sacred literally, letting it become part of your own flesh. The neuroscience confirms what mystics always knew. Eating together releases massive oxytocin, the bonding hormone. It lowers defenses. It creates trust. Sharing meals with someone makes you more likely to cooperate, forgive, support them. Ancient traditions built elaborate spiritual systems around this simple biological truth. Jewish Passover Seder tells entire liberation narratives through specific foods eaten in sequence. Catholic Mass centers on consuming consecrated host. Hindu pujas include intricate food offerings. Pagan harvest festivals celebrate abundance through communal feasting. All variations on one theme. Food as portal where physical and spiritual realms intersect. Why every spiritual path humanity ever walked leads to the same hidden truth. We've reached the point where the veil tears completely open. After exploring prostration, purification, sacred sound, and ritual meals, the pattern becomes impossible to deny. We're not looking at coincidences. We're not seeing cultural copying. We're witnessing something far more profound about human nature itself, a truth so fundamental and manifested independently everywhere humans developed consciousness. There exists a universal language of spiritual seeking, and it wasn't invented by prophets or priests. It was discovered. Every sacred gesture, bowing the body, washing hands, chanting mantras, sharing bread represents a word in this ancient grammar. And what this language reveals is staggering. All of us, regardless of our specific beliefs, are seeking exactly the same thing. We're seeking transcendence. We're seeking connection with something infinitely larger than our isolated egos. We're seeking meaning in existence that often seems absurd and cruel. We're seeking community in loneliness that eats us from inside. We're seeking purity in a world that constantly dirties us. We're seeking inner silence in minds that never stop screaming. Here's what makes this truly unsettling. These sacred rituals actually work. They genuinely alter consciousness states. They really create powerful communal bonds. They actually offer moments of peace and clarity amid chaos. And they work not because some specific god approved them, but because they align with the deep architecture of human psychology. When Muslims prostrate toward Mecca, when Buddhists meditate in absolute silence, when Christians receive consecrated host, when indigenous peoples dance around sacred fires, all are practicing variations on the same universal theme. All are using ancient consciousness transformation technologies. All are accessing portals that exist within human beings' very structure. But here's the most unsettling realization. If all these apparently different religions are fundamentally practicing the same spiritual alchemy with different cultural clothing, what does that say about religious truth's nature? Does one truth exist wearing 1,000 masks? Or is diversity itself the truth that the sacred manifests in infinite forms because human consciousness is infinitely diverse? This isn't an easy question. It may have no definitive answer, but what we know with certainty is this: when you look beyond superficial differences in doctrine, dogma, and tradition, when you observe the rituals themselves, the gestures, sounds, meals, purifications, you discover that all humanity is engaged in the same ancient journey. And here's where everything opens. Because recognizing this underlying unity doesn't mean abandoning your own faith. It means enriching it. It means understanding that your spiritual path forms part of a much larger tapestry, woven by billions of hands across millennia. It means you were never alone in this seeking. You're walking a road worn smooth by countless pilgrims before you, and which will continue being traveled long after you're gone. Every time you bow in prayer, you're joining an unbroken chain stretching back 50,000 years. Every purification ritual connects you to ancestors who discovered these same gateways. Every sacred meal links you to the universal human family that's always gathered in gratitude. Every chant you sing resonates with voices that have called to the divine since language began. This is the hidden truth beneath all religions. We're not separated by our different beliefs. We're united by our shared hunger for something greater. The rituals reveal this unity. The gestures speak this truth. The practices demonstrate what theology often obscures, that humanity's spiritual quest is one journey expressed through infinite beautiful variations. If this truth touched something deep inside you, let that word unity in the comments. Tell me, after discovering these profound similarities, how do you see your own faith now? How do you view religions different from yours? Hit that like if this journey expanded your awareness, subscribe to keep exploring these sacred mysteries with us, and share this video by dropping the word awakening so more people can discover this hidden truth, uniting all human spirituality.